Hello everyone, May in editing here, and I wanted to get out ahead of this video and say that this was taken directly from my stream. I wanted to go ahead and make all of these tier lists for Deathslinger, but never really found a good time to actually record it, so I brought in a live audience to help me understand a little bit of the context of some of the positioning of these things, but ultimately everything that you see here is going to have very minimal editing. I just cut up some dead space here and there, added a bit of background music, and then of course included the final tier list images in here. Initially I was thinking of possibly making this into 3 different videos, but I didn't want to have to edit 3 different videos, and I didn't want my subscription box to just be filled with tier list video after tier list video, and instead wanted to have a very direct place for everyone to look for what are good maps for Deathslinger, what are good add-ons, and what are good perks on the killer. And so that way I can just like direct you to this video. Just everything you kind of want to know in that regard is here in this one video. So there's very little editing in this because trying to edit for a tier list is very difficult. I've done it before and I feel like it just wasn't really that important to put that much effort into, I guess, which sounds a little bit disingenuous in some ways, but it wasn't worth that much effort to have what I feel like is best suited to be a more open discussion, almost podcast kind of thing. Slightly edited so there's less dead space, but you get to hear all my thoughts in there all the same. Throw this on in the background, put this on as your sleep video, all that kind of good stuff. And yeah, it's probably enough yapping from me. Let me just go ahead and take it away to VOD version of me. I wanted to make tier lists and everything for Deathslinger for quite some time now, you know, talking about like all the different ways that like Deathslinger works with his add-ons. I wanted to talk about the maps for Deathslinger, and I wanted to talk about perks as well. So it's going to be a big stream where I'm talking about basically everything that I have listed here, and that way I can have something to edit, and then I have something to show to YouTube to be like, hey, we got the tier list and everything. And I've already gone ahead for the perks and the add-ons, and I've already made the tier list because I think that trying to hem and haw over every individual piece for the perks and the add-ons specifically isn't really worth my time on a lot of things. Like, for example, Shattered Hope as a perk, right? We're not going to be sitting here thinking like, oh, where should I put Shattered Hope on the tier list overall? So on that one, which I'll go to eventually, you'll see that everything's already laid out ahead of time, but I do want to kind of like take time to discuss how everything is placed. As you can see, yes, it is the old add-on colors because this tier list was last modified 4 years ago. But the thing about this tier list anyway is that even if it's last modified 4 years ago, I still think that the idea still kind of gets across. Just everything that's green is blue and everything that's yellow is green now. So it's a little bit wrong, a little bit different, but this is genuinely what I think about Deathslinger's add-ons overall. I think most of them are pretty bad because they either don't improve the power, they don't really do a lot to actually shore up the weaknesses, and in some ways they're very gimmicky, or the only reason that they're actually any good is because they can be paired with other add-ons or other perks and other playstyles overall. So if we look at D tier, for example, this is just in order that I placed them in. They're not in like actual order overall. This is probably the worst one. Jaw Smasher would be down here. Poison Ivy Leaves at least has a little bit of value. Snake Oil's pretty low. Bayshore's Gold Tooth like technically has a little bit of use out of it, and then I think you could technically say that this gets used as well. So that would probably be a more accurate order overall. Poison Ivy Leaves, for those of you who don't know, it increases the mend timer for Deathslinger's the deep wound that he applies by 1.5 seconds. So any deep wound gets 1.5 seconds longer. So you go from 6 seconds to 7.5 with this add-on. Great. It replaces Warden's Keys or any other useful add-on that we have up here. Chewing Tobacco doesn't stack the stun timer with Bayshore's Cigar. It only takes the higher value, which is Bayshore's Cigar. So this add-on is actually just useless because 0.25 seconds off of the stun timer is completely useless. And then the 2 add-ons that reduce the terror radius when you're aiming down sights. Aiming down sights in general with Deathslinger is just so useless. It's so terrible. Like, you're just walking around with your sights up, looking down your sights, and you have 12 meters. You have a 12 meter shorter tear radius, which brings it down to 20, which you're like, oh, but you can pair that with Monitor and Abuse. But then why would you want to pair that with Monitor and Abuse when you can run undetectable perks? Unforeseen's a great perk on Deathslinger. You can do Furtive Chase. You can do anything along those lines. And those two add-ons still just wouldn't be useful. Then you have Snake Oil, which is written incorrectly. It doesn't actually increase the speed at which you reel. It increases your movement speed, like your strafing speed while you're reeling. It doesn't actually increase the time that the chain takes to reach you. So 2.5% increases your movement speed by, I think, you're moving at 2.79, so 2.5% of 2.79 is like 0.4 meters a second? No, 0.04. It's like nothing. It's literally nothing. And so that's why that's down there. Jaw Smasher makes it so that you move faster when you're aiming down sights by 1.5%. And the Rickety chain is just bad. Well, I don't think I really need to say too much in depth about this, but like every single one of these add-ons is individually bad because they don't do anything. And what if you don't have enough Bayshore cigars is a good question, Rabbit, but the reason why chewing tobacco is so useless is because the time that you save on chewing tobacco, you already save with Modified Ammo Belt, or you already save with Warden skis, or you save with any other add-on on top of here. Like, the stun duration being 0.25 seconds is so inconsequential comparatively that you have other add-ons that would actually supplement the playstyle better. Like, even anything in C tier would be better than trying to use the chewing tobacco in that regard. And yeah, most add-ons are useless. They're all pretty terrible in my opinion. Like, you can try to mess around with them, but then when you're using anything from this tier now, which again, Bayshore's Gold 2, slightly faster than Snake Oil, you can kind of feel it. Like 5% is something, I guess, but it really isn't all that much. But it is something, so that's why it's like down here. I think Spit Polish Rag is actually probably the best of the C tier stuff. Spit Polish Rag and Tin Oil can do the same thing, where it reduces when you take a shot, the shot retracts at a certain speed, and then you have a 1.5 second cooldown on a miss until you can reload. Tin Oil Can reduces that by half a second, Spit Polish Rag reduces that by 0.25 seconds. And these stack, actually. You can get 0.75 seconds if you stack both of these together. It's not ideal, though. Tin Oil Can's good, because then you can pair it with keys. You don't want to just do double, like, miss cooldown add-ons, because it's not nearly as efficient, and not something that you're always going to be doing. Because if you hit the shot, then you're going to want to reload. If you miss the shot, then you'll want the faster reload. And so, that's why this is down in C tier. Like, you run this if you run out of tin oil cans, or you just don't really have a lot of high tier add-ons. Spit Polish Rag is not terrible, but I think it's something that you generally don't want to run by itself, because it's just, you have other things up here that are more valuable than it. Honey Locust Thorns, when you break the chain, you apply Mangled for 70 seconds. Rusted Spike does something similar. It applies Mangled for 60 seconds when you hit a basic attack, and I'm always of the belief that you want to actually be hitting your basic attacks with Deathslinger more than you want to actually be breaking the chain. And the reason for that is that Deathslinger tends to pair really well with a lot of M1 perks, and his add-ons also apply M1 effects if you have Iridescent Coin. And also, when you break the chain, you snap your view down, and I think you move slightly slower than if you were in a basic attack recovery. And I say I think because I haven't really tested it, but it feels slower. So it's harder for you to track a survivor when you break the chain, which is why I have Rusted Spike up here instead of Honey Locust Thorns. Barbed Wire increases the mend timer by 4 seconds. It's Poison Ivy Leaves. I think this one might actually be slightly better than Bayshore's Gold Tooth, but still pretty bad overall. Now I'm going to move Wanted Poster down as well. Wanted Poster does the same thing as Jaw Smasher, just increases your movement speed while aiming down sights by 3%, which can be a bit of a crutch, but it also doesn't do a whole lot for you outside of like really heavy zoning playstyles. I typically don't play with heavy zoning playstyles. I don't think it's the most efficient way to play Deathslinger because you lose a lot of distance by doing that. I know that other Deathslinger mains would disagree with me on this, but I really don't think Wanted Poster is a very good add-on. It has its use case scenarios, but it's not very good. Same with Hellshire Iron. It has its use case scenarios, but the problem is that the 10 seconds that you have starts the instant that the chain breaks, whether that's through you breaking the chain with by letting it go through an obstacle or letting the chain expire, or by getting a basic attack. And so the most time that you'll get is by pairing this with Bayshore's Cigar, and you get 8 seconds of undetectable, because it starts like right when the chain breaks. So Hellshire Iron is kind of funny, but it's not good. Moving on to the B tier stuff as well. Modified Ammo Belt is still decent. Like, it's only 0.1 seconds off of an S tier add-on, which is Warden's Keys, but then you're always running Warden's Keys anyway, because Warden's Keys is just good. Modified Ammo Belt, I feel, is either A, seen as the poor man's Warden's Keys, or B, it's good because you can pair it with Warden's Keys. If you run out of keys, you run belt, or if you want to do double reload, you run keys and belt. This add-on can never separate itself from the identity that keys offers to Deathslinger, and because of that, it's like, it's good. I will definitely put it at the top of B here, but the fact that it doesn't really do anything outside of what keys already does, you're not really going to see this breaking into a tier where it's actually kind of useful. Then I have Prison Chain here. Prison Chain's a weird one. I know that some people don't really like Prison Chain because it doesn't add a lot to Deathslinger overall, but I'm going to put it in B tier, personally, because it gives you an extra 0.4 seconds on the chain overall, and with Deathslinger being a character that works with such incredibly fine margins overall, 400 milliseconds, for those of you in my For Honor group, 400 milliseconds is a lot of time to work with. And because you have 400 milliseconds to work with here, that gives you so much time on Deathslinger, a lot of extra time to actually be able to swing around the back of an obstacle. You'll see this sometimes run even in comp to make unsafe pallets even more unsafe, especially because I believe the comp map for Deathslinger is Suffocation Pit, and that's a lot of the like Macmillan fillers, which have those massive rocks around them, and so getting yourself more of a guaranteed hit off of Prison Chain really, really helps, especially if you're going for basic attacks. Then we have, Mangled or Rusted Spike, which we talked about. Gives you the Mangled on basic attack. It's not a bad slowdown effect, but you're often sitting here with Rusted Spike thinking like, I could also just have, an add-on that does something else. You would run Prison Chain over Rusted Spike, in my opinion. You would even run Modified Ammo Belt with Rusted Spike as like a really poor man's combo, and it wouldn't be bad. It's just like, when you think of add-ons, it's like, yeah, they're all right. And that's why it's in B tier. Like, B tier is just like, I mean, it's all right, with Mangled or Rusted. I keep saying Mangled Spike, but it's Rusted Spike that applies Mangled. And then onto our A tier. I'm putting Bayshore's Cigar not at the top of A tier intentionally here, specifically because Bayshore's Cigar gets use for Deathslinger half of the time that it's active. So you shoot the survivor and you break the chain and you get your injury on them, and then you also get that faster stun recovery time. It takes it from 2.75 seconds to 2 seconds overall. But the problem with Bayshore's Cigar specifically is that when you already have a survivor injured, you're not going to be following up on an injured survivor by breaking the chain like that. I mean, maybe there's like some very specific use case scenarios after they're injured where you're like, okay, I gotta pull him in closer, but I'm not gonna be able to get him through the back of this obstacle, so I'm gonna break the chain, and then the faster recovery time will let me catch up quicker anyway. But here's the thing. If you swing at the last possible second before the chain actually breaks, you gain distance by getting the lunge burst movement speed, and the lunge recovery time is only 1.5 seconds. So you actually get a faster recovery time by just going for a basic attack than you do breaking the chain on an injured survivor. However, the 2-tap capability for this add-on by itself is so immense that when you do actually break the chain on a healthy survivor, you can break the chain 2-second recovery time, which is faster than a basic attack, and then follow up with, whatever kind of extra speed you might have. You have batteries included or something applied, and you break the chain with Bayshore's Cigar, you can just fly at somebody and knock them down. There's like good use case scenarios with Cigar, but I do think that it not being useful half of the time that you're playing Deathslinger, like literally half the time, it's just not an add-on that I consider S tier, but it's still very good. And then we also have the tin oil can, is the other one that we have in here, which tin oil can, I consider it top of A tier because if you miss your shots, you get faster time until you can reload. Really, really simple. And I think that even the best Deathslingers still have moments where they miss more often. Now you might be wondering, why doesn't that pair? Why not just like pair keys and belt together? Why do I pair keys and oil can together? It's because with keys and belt, sure, I get a faster reload after being able to hit a shot or anything along those lines, but if I miss, then keys and can actually gives me a faster reload time because I'm able to reload more immediately. Also, tin oil can has gotten me some hits or gotten me into better positions regularly, because what Deathslinger, or what they don't say about Deathslinger, is that when you do miss that shot, that 1.5 seconds after the shot returns to your rifle, you can't take any action. Like, it's not just you can't reload, you can't vault, you can't basic attack, you can't do anything. And so you have to wait for the shot to finish its like recovery period there. And so tin oil can reduces that recovery period until you can actually do something by 0.5 second, meaning that I have gotten hits where I'll miss a close range shot, but because I'm running tin oil can, I get a faster recovery time, and I'll get an M1 on somebody that I would have missed at close range anyway, or that I did miss at close range. So that's why I really like tin oil can. Now, it does rely on you missing in order for you to not actually get value out of it. So there is kind of like a skill disparity there, and it is a bit of, you can almost call it a crutch add-on in that way. But I think that what you actually get out of tin oil can, compared to a lot of the other, almost all of the add-ons in Deathslinger's list, this is one that is like a really good all-rounder for pretty much anyone playing the killer that isn't extremely experienced with it. And then that of course brings us up to S tier. Now, Iridescent Coin, I'm always so conflicted about Iridescent Coin, because you get an indoor map, you get a map that doesn't have good lines of sight, and also with this new pallet density update, there's so many more obstacles in the way, so it's harder to get long-range shots. And Iridescent Coin sometimes gets these weird moments where, depending on the map, or depending on the way that the survivors are playing or whatever, you're not able to actually land sharpshooter shots. But this add-on by itself, you land one sharpshooter shot with it, and suddenly the entire game changes. It is the most snowbally of snowbally add-ons if you catch one survivor lacking. You catch one survivor lacking, instant down with the Iridescent Coin. You then reload with your Warden's keys, and then you're back up again and you're ready to take another shot with Iridescent Coin. This thing being a constant threat throughout the game, even if you're not always getting value out of it, even if you're not always hitting long-range shots, makes it so much more oppressive and so incredibly strong compared to everything else. But it's always those little exceptions. But what if you get an indoor map? But what if you get a map that has like really weird obstacles that you can't shoot through? But what if you're playing in a really dense location? And those are kind of the situations where I say that it's not top of S tier, but every time that you run this add-on and you get value out of it, you're like, oh, thank God I used Iridescent Coin. So that's why I have it up here. And then, of course, just Warden's Keys at the top. Like, Warden's Keys I run all the time. I have 500 of them in my inventory. And it's not hard to understand why, because it just reduces the reload timer. You need to reload as Deathslinger no matter what you do, whether you hit the shot, whether you miss the shot, and you'll always want to run the one that just gives you more reload time, because you're not going to run, if you have Warden's Keys, you're not going to run Ammo Belt, but you can run Warden's Keys and then pair it with any of the other add-ons, because even if you're running, like, let's say Warden's Keys with Barbed Wire, and then you break the chain or hit somebody and get deep wound, and then they have to mend, and they take 4 seconds longer to mend with Barbed Wire, you still have Warden's Keys to help you reload. It is consistent no matter what build you bring it in, and so it's just his best add-on. It's an extremely boring add-on, admittedly, but I think that Warden's Keys is the top of the tier list here for a very good reason, and it probably is never going to leave this unless Deathslinger gets like a full-on add-on pass, and I don't see that happening anytime soon. I think that Deathslinger is going to remain untouched for months to come because he has not had any significant bug fixes, so this is probably just as how it's going to be. And yeah, that's kind of my opinion, but I'm sure there are people who disagree with how I view these add-ons. Some might be higher, some might be lower, but overall I feel pretty confident in this listing for myself. And yeah, that'll be the add-ons. That's all the ranking of the add-ons. All right, so here's your map tier list maker. So I was trying to think of like the way to kind of quantify Deathslinger maps, and I think that there are some maps in this game that have really fun shots, but the map is bad for Deathslinger. I think a perfect example of this is the Decimated Borgo. Super fun shots. You have the ability to shoot through pretty much any of the platforms on the map. You have that like tiny little crack in shack, and also like underneath the shack wall it has this kind of staggered, I would say, like wood texture on the bottom. If you're in basement, you can actually shoot underneath the slots in Shattered Square, and it's like in Shattered Square Shack. And that's kind of like elite ball knowledge, but those are fun shots to land. And a lot of the stuff that you can land on the map otherwise is like through so many of the stands and through so many of the outbuildings that the map has all around. But the problem that Deathslinger has specifically with the Shattered Square is that the main building has a really good god palette that you can't really ignore unless there's like one specific angle that you can get on it when a survivor vaults it, if they vault it at the wrong time. But you have to run like coup de grace and prison chain in order to get value out of it. So it's like the actual ability to deal with main building on Shattered Square is so bad for Deathslinger overall. And the map is massive, so it takes them a while to clear it, so you have to kind of like hold a 3-gen from the start of the game, which isn't very fun, which is also why I think it's kind of a bad map, but it has so many fun shots to land overall. Yeah, Hawkins gets its own tier. Hawkins gets its own tier in hell, because there's literally one fun shot that you can do on this map that doesn't include just shooting through railings, and that is it. I hate Hawkins, I hate playing it. I hope that the Stranger Things license gets pulled again so I never have to play this map, but I know that's likely not going to happen, so I'm not going to let my greed get in the way of it, but I'm still going to be putting it in its own tier in Turbo Hell here. So that's why it's all the way down here. Lery's in Shadow Realm tier? I think it's boring shots, bad map. Because there's like, Lery's specifically, there are some shots you can land through like the gurneys, or you can land over the, there's like those vertical planters. They have these walls that have the plants on top of them, and you can actually, the plants have no collision. So you can shoot through the plants to hit the survivor on the other side. And then, actually, let me just pull Lery's now. I think it's kind of like a boring shots bad map, where you can land some things through the gaps in the gurneys. You can land them through the likes of, by the way, thank you, Chick, for the follow, while we're talking about the tier list here. You can land shots through the gurneys. You can land shots kind of through the windows. You can land shots kind of up through the main building area there, and you can deny a lot of pallets. And those are like kind of okay, but they're not the most exciting shots to land overall. And then Lery's itself is also just kind of a bad map. It's small, it's a small map, it's the smallest map in the game entirely. But the thing about it being a small map is that survivors can still hear you coming, and it's an indoor map. And so survivors can stealth away from you. And I've seen a lot of people running Iron Will, I've seen a lot of people running Fixated, I've seen a lot of people running Sprint Burst, and trying to shoot survivors in a hallway when they have Sprint Burst and they can just dart around a corner makes Lery's a bad map fundamentally, and the shots themselves become really boring to play. Groaning Storehouse into Fun Shots bad map. Similar problem that Borgo has. Actually, is that right? Yeah, similar problem to what Borgo has Shattered Square has, and that specifically being that trying to land shots on main building is really fun. You can get the windows, you can get through the cracked windows, the tile windows out the front of the building, and get injuries through there. And it's a Macmillan map. You have really good fundamentals that you can work on. Every tile is very consistent aside from like the recent palette density update, but I'm not really considering that for this tier list right now, because I think that the palette density update is going to get repealed in some capacity at some point in the future. But I think that Groaning Storehouse's problem of being such a massive map severely detriments the Deathslinger anyway, that even though you can land some fun shots here and there, especially around the main building, you're just not ever in the game. You're not ever really able to actually keep up with the survivors just because of how easy it is for them to spread out throughout the entire map. And that's why I feel like it's just kind of a bad map overall. Suffocation Pit, I would say Suffocation Pit is actually fun shots good map, and it is Deathslinger's comp map for a reason, and that's because you have consistently those tiles in the center of the map. You have main building, which actually has a lot of really fun gaps that you can shoot through, very consistent windows. It's a map that you can also get some really fun things through because of the way that the main building is organized. And you then have that mess of tiles in the center, and then shack as well. All of it just kind of chains together in this weird way that makes it this constant ring of 50-50s that Deathslinger can win very easily if the person piloting the Deathslinger is able to understand how the map is laid out. Once you understand the way that the tiles are laid out in Suffocation Pit, and once you understand what you can shoot through, which is a lot on the main building, this map becomes so fun. And it's a good map for Deathslinger. I think it kind of melds the sizes together correctly, where you're still at a disadvantage because you have to travel a lot of the map too, but there's so much that you can control with Deathslinger on this map to the point where it wraps around to being good again. And I think Suffocation Pit's actually like a map when I see it, I'm like, oh, okay, cool, Suffocation Pit, this will be a tense match. I think Shelter Woods can also go up. Is it? Okay, there's a couple that you can land. There's that netting that's outside of the tents on main, where you have the hole in the netting outside, and if a survivor crosses underneath that, you can shoot them through that. So there's like that shot, and then there's main, and then there's also like that really bad filler palette in the bottom of main building, and then there's the main windows that you can hit through, and a lot of the other like short pallets that you can hit around, and then you have all of the tiles and the massive tree that Shelter Woods has, plus it's Macmillan Shack, so Macmillan Shack's really consistent. It's just like, it's a good map. It has fun shots, I think, compared to a lot of other maps. It has railings that you can shoot through, which is really fun. And that's why I think that Shelter Woods should be up here, because you do have a couple of things you can do, and it's a good map. It's a map that I'm not upset to see because of how consistent it actually is. Coal Tower, not a fun main building, and the rest of it is just, it's kind of okay. It's a comp map. Coal Tower is a comp map for a lot of other killers, not Deathslinger specifically, but for a lot of killers it is a good comp map, and I think there's reason to it. Yeah, Comp Tower, exactly what it's called, and for good reason too. But yeah, like it's a comp map for a reason, because it's well balanced, and I think it's a good map just in general. Maybe not specifically for Deathslinger, it's not the greatest because of how big Macmillan maps can be, but I think it's better than Groaning Storehouse because a lot of the play is usually condensed to a lot of very specific pockets. Groaning Storehouse has this massive main building that you can kind of sometimes get shots around, whereas Coal Tower, you have the windows on main building that you can get hits through, you can down people through, and once you exasperate the resources around main becomes a lot easier for Deathslinger to play. I do find Coal Tower to be kind of boring though, because unlike Suffocation Pit and unlike Shelter Woods, where you can get fun shots around the main area, you don't really have a whole lot of good options comparatively, and I do find myself getting bored by Coal Tower when I do end up playing it and being like, ah, yeah, this is a comp map, I gotta make sure I'm playing it optimally because everyone else also knows how to play this really well. Oh, Ironworks of Misery. I feel like it's another Macmillan issue, but the same with Groaning Storehouse, in that the main building kinda sucks. There's fun stuff you can do on the main building, don't get me wrong, and there is like one hyper illegal shot that you're allowed to hit. You can't really see it in the thumbnail, but there's like this office space here in the main building, where if you're underneath of it, there's an angle that you can shoot at where the material is so thin, the floor material is so thin that you can literally shoot through the floor of this and catch survivors that are on that window or on that doorway, depending on what spawns on Ironworks of Misery. It's fucking insane that someone discovered that you can do that on this map. It's not supposed to happen, and it shouldn't, but it happens anyway. But aside from that and the railings on Ironworks of Misery and maybe the main window kind of thing, it's just an okay map. I mean, it's bad for Deathslinger because of how big it is and how easy it is to run everything, so I don't think that this is particularly conducive to Deathslinger's power, and I'm going to keep it down there for that reason. Talking about Azarov's resting place, I think that this map is really boring, because you load into this map, and it's like, oh, okay, I just gotta hold a 3-gen on one side of the map, and so you just don't interact with one side the entire time. And even though it is an auto-haven map, and you can shoot through pretty much anything that you can see through, there is actually a broken hitbox on the main building, where you can't shoot through the slotted windows on the front of it for some reason. But the reason why I don't like ARP specifically is because of that kind of like 3-gen playstyle, and it becomes so dull and uninteractive every time that you come here. And then when you're playing in smaller locations, you can't really be like, oh, I'm gonna go and play around this tile in the center of the map. It's like, no, you're kind of just hanging around either main or shack side, pick a side. That makes the play a lot more boring just because of how the map is designed. You can get a lot of crazy shots, like there's a lot of insanely tight pixels that you can shoot through on Azarov's resting place, as you can with any auto-haven map. But because of Azarov's resting place being the map that it is, I'm gonna say that it's like way down here in terms of overall intrigue for Deathslinger. Then we have Blood Lodge. Blood Lodge, kind of fun shots, bad map. It's a big map as well, pretty survivor-sided. The main building's okay. Nobody ever goes upstairs, they just use the window that's on the main side of it there. And then there's a broken hitbox on the railing, actually, on the first floor of Blood Lodge. I discovered that recently, nearby where the main generator spawns. Though I could be hitting the generator hitbox, but then again, it's another bad hitbox that you can't shoot through because behavior said no, you're not allowed to shoot through our boxy generators in that way. But I think that there's like some fun to be had, because unlike Azarov's resting place where you pick a side that you can go to, you can actually play a lot of the other parts of the map, and you're actually able to explore a lot of it, especially the excavator tile on auto-haven maps. I mean, I have Azarov's down here, even though it has the excavator tile, that doesn't really matter. You can shoot underneath the excavator on Blood Lodge, and that's a lot more exciting than trying to just play around one half of the map. But with it being such a large map and a lot of like resources that survivors can use, it does kind of fall by the wayside in terms of overall efficacy, or it falls by the wayside in terms of how efficiently Deathslinger can actually hold on to the map overall. And I'm going to say the same thing about Gas Heaven. Fun shots, kind of an insane main building, it always has been, really big map, but super fun shots because you can land stuff through there's like these piles of cars, of like crushed cars, right, that you have on the map, and there's gaps in between the cars that you can shoot through, and that's super fun being able to try to land and line those shots up. But it's a bad map because it's so big that, again, if you are given no opportunity to catch up to survivors, Deathslinger's just going to be kind of sprinting around. But yeah, I'm gonna put this one down here in terms of like really fun shots but bad map. I think I'm gonna put Toba here as well. In fact, since we brought up Toba, I'm gonna put Toba in the same tier. This isn't organized, this is just organized by the list that I'm putting him in right now. I'm gonna put Toba in fun shots and also bad map, which might be controversial because Shack is terrible for Deathslinger, but every single filler tile on this map, every single one, has like this kind of jagged rock appearance to it, and you can shoot through a lot of it. You can shoot over a lot of it. Main building, that god palette that most M1 killers would struggle to deal with, and even some M2 killers, Deathslinger does not care about. he actually thrives in main building quite a bit because of that. There's that also that gauntlet palette underneath main building that always spawns, and that palette also not very effective against Deathslinger because he can shoot over it and catch survivors that are on the back of it. And also you have the shot that like you can go underneath. I shot somebody like through some of the bookshelves or whatever, the ammo cases in Toba Landing main. And so there are some good things to be said about Toba Landing in terms of the fun shots that you can land, but the problem is that it's such a visually noisy map. It's a big map, has a lot of really good palette spawns, and the shack you just have to avoid because shack sucks. Shack sucks overall as a map, or for this map specifically. In fact, Toba Landing shack is the worst shack in the game for Deathslinger, and that's another reason why it's a bad map overall, and that's why I think that even though there are some fun shots to be had, it's just a bad map. That leads me to the Wrecker's Yard, which is, I would say, a fun shots good map. It could, actually, I think Wrecker's Yard might be perfect, because it's a small map, doesn't have a main building, has a shack that you can really easily orient yourself around, and every single tile can be shot through. Now with the palette density update, it's a little bit more annoying to deal with, but Wrecker's Yard is just so good for Deathslinger. You always have the ability to shoot through pretty much any tile. There's like no singular tile that you're incapable of landing a hit on with Deathslinger, and Wrecker's Yard being small enough allows you to also experiment with angles you might not have been able to do before, and all the hitboxes work, at least as far as I know. Hopefully, like, fingers crossed that it still does work. But yeah, this is, I feel very confident putting Wrecker's Yard this high up at the top of the list because it's just consistent, it's good. Hawkins is too high, you're right. Hawkins needs to be in Turbo Hell. We need to add another tier down below. Okay, I gotta get Wretched Shop out of the way. Oh, fun shots, good map. Similar in not quite perfect like Wrecker's Yard, but not like as big or as oppressive in my opinion as Wretched or as a Bloodlodger Gas Heaven, and definitely not as boring as Azarov's Resting Place. There's so many cool things that you can do on Wretched Shop, especially on that main building. There's that car that's on the lift, and you can shoot underneath the lift to catch a survivor there. Or you can shoot through the windows outside of main as the survivor goes out the window to then catch and pull them around the outside. Or you can shoot through the slots on main into a survivor walking around the front of main. A lot of really fun little angles that you can do with it. And I think that it is a map that I do not mind seeing. Even if it is a bit on the larger side, it's not one that I mind because of the ability to actually play around a lot of the tiles that the map has to offer. And again, it's an Auto Haven map. Auto Haven has consistent collision, and that's what makes Deathslinger really fun to play, is having collision that's consistent. Next we have Rotten Fields Rancid Abbatoir. Or no, this is a Fractured Cowshed. I'm sorry. I'm still thinking of the right thing. That's my bad. Fractured Cowshed, I think, has some fun shots you can land on it, especially because you have that one like outside of main palette that survivors think is a god palette, but much like Toba Landing, you can land a shot on it. Past that, the map is small enough to manage, I guess. There's some stuff you can shoot through some of the wagons, and Coldwind in general, let me just get this out of the way with the Coldwind Realm in general, but the Coldwind Realm has a problem where the hay bales that you have that spawn are too tall for Deathslinger to shoot over. And so a lot of those tiles actually become a lot stronger, whereas in a Auto Haven map, it wouldn't be a problem because those always spawn a lot shorter obstacles comparatively. Coldwind as a realm doesn't really offer that, but then every filler palette is so unsafe anyway on Coldwind that it kind of doesn't matter. You're able to animation lock a lot of people, but I find that kind of boring, but I still think Fractured Cowshed's like just a good map overall. It's okay. Midwich deserves Hawkins tier. I think it suffers the same stuff that Lery's does in that you just pre-run the palette and then sit there and wait. There's like I've said with Fractured Cowshed up here already, I think that there are some fun things you can land, and there's some unsafe palettes that survivors try to play around that Deathslinger can play around as well. But when you're just going, go to pallet, shoot survivor over pallet, hit over pallet, it's not that great. There is one shot that you can land on with the science room or whatever it's called, where there's that ramp that goes up, and if you're outside in the hallway, you can shoot through, there's that like ventilation window at the top. You shoot through that ventilation window, you can catch somebody going up the ramp in there. And that is where Midwich's experimentation kind of starts and ends for me. The courtyard's kind of okay. You can kind of try to mind game around some of the other palettes and things like that. But personally, I just don't find Midwich a particularly entertaining map, and I find it very boring to play on because of it. RPD goes in Hawkins. Hello, Dax. I agree. I think RPD should go in Hawkins tier. Like there's like two. Here's the thing about RPD. RPD has 2 really fun shots that you can land, maybe 3 if you really want to stretch for it, and he can turn the map into his own playground. First of all, Welcome Leon Room. That entire desk you can shoot survivors over very easily. If you're on East Wing, you can quite simply shoot over the ventilations because they actually fixed that, and we hit that shot yesterday on stream. And then there's that little office room that I can shoot underneath the blinds, and I showed that on stream as well. I shot a guy through that. And then maybe a 4th shot would be that you can hit through the railings on the main room. So there's like some fun shots. There are genuinely some really fun shots that you can land on RPD, but I think that the way that RPD generally plays overall, I'm going to put both of the RPD maps in here, in Hawkins tier, because the way that RPD plays overall doesn't make up for the fact that the rest of the map is so miserable to play on. You're like, oh, I'm going to go pre-run to a pallet. Oh, I'm going to go pre-run to this hallway and then through this window and things like that. You know, being a 110 killer just makes these maps so miserable to play on. We even saw in my video where I was talking about why indoor maps suck, where I had my friend play Trapper, and I was like, okay, I want to see how far I can pre-run you. I saw him come out of the Welcome Leon room while I was at the top of main, and I was able to make it out of main to the office, to the little archive room, all the way out the hallway to the window vault, and then back down to that triple vault room with the pallet in one run against a 115 killer. And that's like being a 115 killer. If I was a 110 killer and I didn't land my shot or didn't have a good opportunity to land a shot, which I kind of rarely do unless you're anticipating somebody at the top of the stairs, RPD just is so easy for survivors to play versus the time that you have to commit to it. I can make something out of it, but it's like trying to make dinner out of a package of spaghetti and like a half stick of butter. You can do things on it. You can make it into something, but you don't want that for dinner every night. You're like, I want to add some marinara to this. Give me something interesting. I hate RPD because it's boring to play on. And that's why I think it deserves Hawkins tier. Like it's below, it's an Enigma where you have some fun shots, but it's such a bad map. Yeah, it takes 40 seconds to start chases, or when you do get into a chase, they take 3 minutes to finish, especially if you're a 110 killer. It's just not great. I'm gonna get Freddy Fazbear's boring shots, bad map. You get it. You go to super hell for that one. Anyway, Freddy Fazbear. This map infuriates me because there's a lot of shots that you could have, but the hitboxes aren't fixed, and so you can't have any fun shots on this map. And once the generators in main are finished, sometimes there's one that spawns in, well, there's always one that's guaranteed to spawn in main in front of the stage, and sometimes there's one that spawns in the reception area. But after those generators, or even the main gen by itself is done, you literally do not interact with main ever again as killer. Like, you don't see that part of the map ever again. And it's so boring to play the rest of it because of that. There's so many things that would be so interesting about this map, but it's so poorly designed that it frustrates me immensely. I just like, I don't like, oh, someone's running a main, okay, I'm just gonna go run into one of these filler tiles over here to figure things out, and that's what I do. Like, I'm sorry to be so like heated about this, but god, I wish that this map was better. It's just not fun for me. Ball pit not being a possible shot is criminal. I do agree with that. You can't shoot through the netting on the ball pit. You can't, in fact, when you're on, even if the ball pit doesn't spawn, the railing that goes into the basement that spawns there sometimes in place of the ball pit, that also has a tall hitbox. So you actually get a hitbox rejection on that for no reason. The game for Deathslinger is a hitbox playground, but the map just fucking sucks. It's not as bad as the other maps that are below it. Like, the other maps that are below it, like, Lery's is super boring, and there's not a lot of lines of sight. The reason why the game is up here at all is because on the upstairs floor, at least you have a lot of good lines of sight. In fact, if I swap my sources here real quick and pull up a clip, you can shoot over that. And then look, I'm going to hit here. Boom! Over top of these boxes. Like, you can hit over top of those boxes there. You see this Felix? Look. He's walking up the rails here. You shoot him through this. Like, that's super fucking fun. Oh my god. Like, being able to just, and then what, like, chat's reaction here being like, you can shoot through that is like one of my favorite. One of my favorite. There we go. There's Spacey and Rex. I know that our chat right now is kind of like overlaying it. But yeah, like, you know, you can shoot through that, and that's why the game is fun. That's why the game has fun shots, but it's just a bad map. So now we have the rest of our Coldwind maps as well. We've been going on tangents and talking about a bunch of other maps in the meantime, just to kind of keep it spicy, I guess. Rotten Fields is like boring shots, good map. I think that's a pretty fair assessment. You don't have a whole lot of interesting things that you can do on Rotten Fields in particular, but it's such a small map anyway that it doesn't matter. Now, there is one broken hitbox on the Harvester that you can't shoot through on Coldwind maps, but I think that it also just kind of falls into the sequence where there's not a whole lot of interesting things to do with it, but it's still just good because of how small it is. They're hard to hit due to the corn. That too, yeah. It's satisfying to, like, predict somebody through the corn as well, because you know that neither of you can see each other, and it's a little terrifying to be, like, sprinting through the corn as a survivor and then just getting fucking yoinked back by the Deathslinger. And that's like, okay, that's an element of horror that I enjoy. Fractured Cowshed and Rotten Fields are up here in boring shots, good map. I think that Thompson House, the main building, is infuriating enough to have it be a bad, like, I never interact with the main building hardly at all. And then the map itself was also kind of big, and so Thompson House becomes this mess that you don't really like playing on overall. There's some fun fences you can land things through, I guess, but Coldwind overall as a realm is just, it's boring. Excuse me, it's boring to play on. Which brings me to Rancid Abbatoir. Rancid Abbatoir is a weird one. Like, the main building sucks, but you have some things you can do on it. Actually, controversial take, I'm gonna put it down here. The main building, you have some slots that you can shoot through. You have a lot of really unsafe locations that you can shoot through. But the rest of the map is so big that it circles back around to being bad again. So I'm not too enthused whenever I'm like, yay, Rancid Abbatoir. When I get Rancid Abbatoir, I'm like, I can kind of make something out of this, and at least it's not ARP or something along the, like, anything in the bad map category down here. Rancid Abbatoir always feels like a map that I can potentially do something on, but maybe I'm like gaslighting myself into believing that it's something I can actually get a result on. I think, you know what? I'm gonna put it in boring bad map. I think it's too easy to pre-run actually on Rancid Abbatoir for too little in return. That's how I feel. I think that feels more correct. Like, I'm more okay with saying that it's boring and bad than in saying it's fun but bad. Torment Creek. Controversial again. May gets controversial for a 7th time in the stream. I think it's a fun map. Main building in particular, I really like, because there are so many gaps in the main building. But I think it's such a bad map because of how fucking big it is. Like, I so badly want to say that, like, I love playing on Torment Creek. Everything about it works well for Deathslinger. It's a great map. It's so fun. It has a lot of fun stuff. Like, I so badly want to put this higher. But when I look into my heart of hearts and I stare into my soul, Torment Creek feels like such a massive map comparatively that it just, like, it's almost good. This category is really weird in the way that it's like you have really fun things you can do on these maps, but you also just have a bad time on it because you're like, oh, okay, cool, I got the shot, and I'm 70 meters away from the nearest point of action. Yeah, if Slinger was 4.6, a lot of these maps, honestly, like Borgo would go up. Borgo, Blood Lodge, Gas Heaven, maybe even Groaning Storehouse, Torment Creek, all of these maps that are kind of in this bad category just because of how massive they are, would easily go up into being a good map for Deathslinger, because he'd actually be able to clear them with some speed. But him being 4.4 does hold him back in a lot of ways, and so we're tier listing him based off of like what he can actually do. This isn't also like me saying I dislike a lot of these maps. The ones that I dislike are anything that are in these tiers down here. But it's like a lot of the maps for Deathslinger just aren't great. And there's only a few that actually exceed at being good for him overall, unfortunately. So maybe my criterion is too narrow and I'm being too persnickety about this. But I don't know, I feel like if Slinger was faster or he wasn't as clunky, if they actually reduced the reload recovery time on Deathslinger, I think it becomes so much easier. Next map. Ugh. Threw up in my mouth a little bit looking at this map. I'm just going to put this in Hawkins tier. Fuck you. I do not like Disturbed Ward. Disturbed Ward has some very strange hitbox issues. It's a big map, has too many god palettes, has too many tiles that are just not fun to play around for Deathslinger. And I'm gonna put Father Campbell's in Boring Shot's bad map, because at least around the main building on Father Campbell's, you can kind of get shots through the windows and through the railings and little bits and pieces here and there. Disturbed Ward comparatively feels irredeemable. I don't think anybody really likes this map, and like Corey's saying, I'm trying not to consider it too much for my tier listing of these maps overall, but the palette density really just drives home how awful Disturbed Ward is. Final point about these two maps in the Crotus Pen Asylum realm is that Father Campbell's has some slightly redeemable things about it, to the point where it's like, it's almost bearable. Disturbed Ward has nothing redeemable about it comparatively. I think, no, the thing that I don't like about Badham is that there's so many line of sight breakers and so many potentials for the hedges and the fences to spawn in a way that they're impossible to loop as Deathslinger. In fact, I'll even grab Badham now. Badham gets Hawkins tier. It's bad. Ham. Way too many safe palettes, way too much to try and play around, not a lot of fun shots that you can land. Like on main, you shoot up through the hole in the ground in main, and you animation lock people at pallets, but then every pallet has just these massive fuck off sized obstacles on either side, and so you can't even make filler pallets unsafe because Badham's just so easy to play. And then you have the Quentin house that they can vault through, and you have the windows there, and then you have to play around that building too. It's just like, it's so many layers and so much catch-up work that you have to do all the time. They used to also have really wide hitboxes on the hedges for some reason. So if you're trying to get a narrow shot alongside a hedge, it would just bounce off arbitrarily alongside the hedge. I think they fixed it, because I tested it in a stream, but I can't remember if I was testing that on Haddonfield or not. But Badham Preschool, terrible map for killers just in general, and Deathslinger especially feels it because of the way that you can just constantly loop around main, and main building's extremely safe, and then it's a big map, and then you also have to worry about the other structures that aren't main, which include Shack and the Quentin house. I just don't like Badham. I don't think it's a good map. Like, it has nothing redeemable about it. At least, like, Chapel kind of plays around the same base level of rules that a lot of other maps do, and it has the circus area that can play around. Badham is, like, nothing fun about it. There's nothing interesting about this aside from being like, oh, look, I can shoot over the car chassis, despite you being able to not have your hitbox doesn't look like it's over top of it. That's the only thing about, like, Badham that's kind of, like, okay, I guess. But aside from that, it's too big of a map, it's too safe, it's just aggravating to play on this killer, you know? I hope they reclaim the Stranger Things tier. You know what? I think you're right. I think it does go down there. It goes into Turbo Hell right next to Hawkins. It stays down here. It does not have a lot redeemable about it. At least with Disturbed Ward, you're playing with regular tiles, and at least, like, RPD kind of has fun things. This one, nah. I really don't like Badham. Every time I get him, like, fuck this map, man. They should remove Freddy from the game and take people weeks to notice. Before the rework, yeah, it's shit Badham. Whoa! Confetti falling from the sky, you know. Badham in terrible tier. I hope they reclaim the Stranger Things license and remove Badham Preschool. Isn't it part of the Nightmare on Elm Street? You shut the fuck up right now. Which I saw something recently. I think Robert Englund, who was the actor for Freddy Krueger, actually got a Hollywood Walk Star of Fame today. I just remembered that. Let me check. Let me check real quick. I'm just using my web browser, so now I'm gonna go check. Robert Englund, Hollywood star. He's getting it on Halloween Day. Yeah. So yeah, he's getting a Hollywood Walk Star of Fame on Halloween Day for Freddy Krueger, which is pretty cool. I think that's pretty neat. Anyway, now that we're over our Badham bashing, Haddonfield. I kind of feel this way about it. I feel the same way about it as I do with a lot of these other maps. I don't think Haddonfield has a lot of interesting things about it. Either survivors get into a dead zone or they're playing a filler palette. I feel nothing about this map. Maybe it's like a boring shot's good map, actually. Like, it's kind of boring, but it's a good map for a killer anyway. Yeah, and you do have some of the railings you can hit through, and it's not bad. You do have pallets you can hit over. I just think it's boring. It's a good map. No, you're right. It is a good map. It's a good map in the same way that Rotten Fields is a good map, or that Coal Tower's a good map. It's just kind of boring to play, I feel. Yeah, easy to get the 12-meter distance. That's true. Eyrie Coin does go crazy on the open space in Haddonfield. Ooh, Grim Pantry. Fun Shot's bad map. Yeah. I hit a really fun shot on Grim Pantry, or Pale Rose yesterday, which I think I'll put right next to Grim Pantry here. There's some interesting things you can do on this. Again, I'm going to pull up a clip to show you fellas of my ability to hit this shot over things. Like, you have this. Like, I see the Zarina here, and then I know that she's crossing here, and then I hit over top of that. And there's stuff like that. You know, little details along those lines that you can hit, right? But I don't like the map. And since I don't love the map, I'm not going to be putting it in a very high tier overall. I think I'm pretty confident in keeping it in the bad map tier. Mother's Dwelling. Boring but good. Boring, fun but bad, boring but bad? I don't dislike Mother's Dwelling, and I'm also kind of the same with Temple of Purgation. The maps are big, though. Gosh, I'm so divided on those two. I think I'm okay with these maps. Like, these are maps that I'm actually not too terribly upset by. But I don't think that there's much creativity that you can have outside of the Red Forest shack having really funky hitboxes. The main buildings for both of these aren't that great to play, and they're both kind of boring overall, but a lot of the shorter shots that you can hit are just your typical anti-loop things that you can do, which is what I feel the same about the Cold Wind stuff. But they're not bad maps necessarily. Like, they're not as big as Groaning Storehouse. They're not as big as Azarov's Resting Place or Thompson House or anything like that. They're like, there's some redemptive qualities about them comparatively. Next up, we have Family Residence. I'm going to put down here, controversial take. I don't like Family Residence, but I'm going to put in Fun Shot's bad map anyway. Because I just remembered, you can, there's like those raised kind of shrine platforms that you can shoot underneath from a distance. A lot of the tiles are available you can get hits through, but man, main building is so annoying to play on Family Residence. You have some easy window tiles to play with, you have some easy pallets to kind of play around, sort of, maybe-ish. Yeah, I think it's a bad map. There's some fun things you can do with it. And the shack building also has some interesting things you can do too, which is unexpected, and I like having unexpected shacks in that way, which is why I think it's fun. I think Sanctum of Wrath, though, actually goes up here. Sanctum of Wrath is decent. That main building gives you such a good vantage point. Like, in terms of, like, getting through all the maps, there's not a whole lot that I think that I need to say or elaborate on or really pick apart. I think I have a pretty good feeling for where I want to place everything, and so I don't need to spend too much time just, well, if I'm on this angle at a specific Thursday, it's like I'm considering more like regular gameplay kind of elements. I'm not expecting people in general to know every single trick shot that you can land with Deathslinger. I'm trying to think like moment to moment, what does the average gameplay for this look like, you know? I 100% agree, Eerie Coin. Orm Resort deserves Hawkins tier. Because Ormond Resort is one of Deathslinger's worst maps. Massive main building. Even if you can hit through the railings, it's not consistent. Even if you can catch a survivor on a rock outside, the map is massive. You have no stealth because survivors can just see you coming from a very far distance away. And it's a bright map, so you can't really do anything too creative with it. It's miserable to play on. And I know that it looks nice and people kind of like it and it's easy for survivors to play and stuff, and that's probably why it's so highly rated in the overall popularity contest for DBD. I think it's terrible. Especially for Deathslinger, I think that this map is awful. A lot of the rocks you can't shoot around because the rocks are too tall. There's so many easy Phillip houses that are so easy to greed. The main building has a couple of really decent windows and pallets to play on. And if you can't defend main gen, you basically lose the game. I just don't like Ormond at all. It's too big, it's too open. Like, I know that I say that indoor maps would benefit from being more open, but Ormond benefits from being too open. There's so many just like fill up outs you can greed, fill up out you can greed, you fill up out you can greed over and over and over again, because for Deathslinger, I'm just a 110 killer and I can't shoot over it. The snowplow hitboxes, that was broken a year ago, and they haven't fixed it yet. Because, I don't know, screw skill expression in that regard anyway. Like, you're not consistently hitting that shot enough, but it should be enough of a threat to at least give Deathslinger something, but now it's just broken forever. It's like so disappointing whenever you're playing on Mount Orem Resort to be like, oh, yay, this thing I used to be able to shoot through, oh, sorry, you can't do it anymore. I've hit a couple shots through that too, but they're hard to line up. You have to make sure that the survivor doesn't look at you and doesn't see you doesn't circle back in anticipation of a shot. It was always this kind of like trade-off of how well does the survivor know how to play it and how well does the Deathslinger have to aim through the snowplow. It made him strong on that tile specifically compared to the rest of the map where he just sucks. So I just hate Mount Orem Resort. I never enjoy seeing it. It's probably one of my worst performing maps overall, and I'm putting it down there in Hawkins tier. I will agree that Ormond Lake Mine is just perfect. So much you can do with this map, and it's small, and you get like really cool vertical hits. In my Deathslinger montage, I like 360'd off a balcony and shot a survivor behind a wall. Like, there's just something like laughing at the memory because I'm like, oh, it's so good. It's delicious. I love Ormond Lake Mine. Give me more slop behavior, please. And also, none of the hitboxes are broken. Surprisingly, compared to a lot of the other maps, Ormond Lake Mine actually acts and works as it's fucking designed. And I almost never see it, but it's still good. Like, it is a very, very good map for Deathslinger, and it's a small map. And there are little, like, details and things that you have to kind of keep an eye out for, that there's enough, like, flow of gameplay to where you mess up a couple times and you're behind, but you don't ever feel like you can't do anything because the map is screwing you over. In Ormond Lake Mine, yeah, I think it's great. I think it's fantastic. And that's why I love keeping it up here in the perfect tier overall. Dead Dog Saloon, baby. This one goes up to the top too. So much you can do on Dead Dog Saloon. Oh my god, I see this map and my brain just like fires off dopamine everywhere. Because you have Shack has a lot of weird shots you can hit. You have the water tower, you have the gallows, you have the main building. Like, every structure feels like it was designed with Deathslinger in mind. It's so fun to play. It's a small map. You bring just a little bit of regression and the map is so easy to play on. You can break the chain and make the survivor fall at the same time off of the main building and then get a hit to follow up as they're falling through the sky and get the stagger. You can hit people that are trying to vault through the gallows vault and get them over top of, or get them from behind the wagon that spawns on the gallows vault. You can go underneath the wagon that spawns that guaranteed pallet next to it to also, you can shoot underneath that thing and catch somebody's toes and hit them around the back of it. That pallet is never safe. There's so much, like, this is like Deathslinger's training grounds. If you are good at playing Deathslinger on Dead Dog Saloon, then you're good on playing Deathslinger pretty much everywhere else. It is such a good foundational map for the killer that came out with him, to the point where I would even say it's like probably his best map. And it's so perfect that the map that was released with the character is best worked with the character that the map came with. Like, it's so fun. Yeah, main is kind of annoying, exactly. Like, I think that is one of the downsides of it. But once you break the walls out in main, the one downstairs on the window and the one upstairs on the window, there's so many cool things you can do with it. And now we have Dead Sands. I'm gonna say Boring Shot's good map. It's a shack map. It has a lot of double pallets. It's small. It's not, like, remarkable in its capabilities, but it's still a good map for Deathslinger because of how small it is and how there's a surprising amount that you can shoot through. A lot of the fences that you get in the Forsaken Boneyard, Dead Sands has the capability for you to fire through. So there are some fun things that you can hit. It's not that great, but it's still a good map. Like, I don't feel like I ever played badly on Dead Sands specifically, just because of how small it is and how easy it is for me to track people down. That one. Eyrie of Crows, on the other hand, is boring. But Eyrie of Crows has consistently been a bad map for Deathslinger. I think I might even put it in Hawkins tier, in the same way that Disturbed Ward and all these other maps that are in Hawkins tier belong down here. It's just a bad map that is just so unfun to play on that you can barely even get shots to begin with anyway. Some of the fences you can shoot through, but then there's a broken hitbox in some of the mausoleums. The mausoleums themselves are so massive that even if they're just like little filler pallets, they're safer than Macmillan rocks, which is fucking insane to say. Shack isn't particularly interesting, and then now you have the double pallet tile spawning everywhere. So at least it's not like Stranger Things, where there's nothing. There's like a couple of things for Eyrie of Crows that you can do. Now, is it always consistently fun? No, absolutely not. This map sucks, and Eyrie of Crows deserves to be way down here. As does Garden of Joy. Garden of Joy also just kind of sucks. They fixed the railings on the main building. It took them a while, but the railings on the main building don't have a hitbox anymore. So congratulations, we fixed one thing about Garden of Joy. Garden of Joy is just miserable. I think it's miserable for all killers in general. One redeemable thing is that the jungle gym pallets are sometimes unsafe, and a lot of the filler pallets outside of main are unsafe. And the gazebo's unsafe. So there's like a few things you can do when you're on Garden of Joy, but the main building is so miserable, the rest of the map is so massive, and a lot of the safe tiles that survivors can play on are horrible. They're just awful to play on. And so I just don't like Garden of Joy. I don't think it's very fun to play on, and I just kind of keep it down here. Greenville Square, boring shots, bad map. Yeah. Map is big. Shots are kind of boring. It's a lot of filler pallets, and main building you never interact with, similar to Freddy Fazbear's. But I think it's just a bad map in general, in the same way that Five Nights at Freddy's map is, in the same way that Father Campbell's Chapel is. I just don't like going here very often. I'm not going to be like, okay, thank God it's not one of these down here, but it's still just not fantastic. Needs to be a bit smaller, needs to have a more interesting main building, and also needs to fix the hitboxes on the fucking trees. I just remembered the trees. Chat, I remembered the trees. The trees on Freddy Fazbear's Greenville, Badham, and Fallen Refuge, which is the next one here that's also boring and bad. The tri-prong trees. Those ones that have like 3 branches going up. You can't shoot through them. Oh no, that makes so much sense too. That's why it's down here. You're in the turbo hell tier. You're just awful. All the Withered Isle maps are bad. Look at this. All the Withered Isle maps are just in really bad tiers here. Even the shack building itself isn't like redeemable. Very boring to play on. Way too small, actually, for survivors. Easiest 3-gen of your life if you're playing killer around main. And not a lot of things that are very exciting about it either. Like every pallet's just a 50-50 filler that you can shoot over because the rocks are too small. And so Deathslinger just makes this into his playground, but in a really boring and uninteractive way. Now we have Forgotten Ruins. Boring and bad. I don't want to talk about this one too much more. I really think it just kind of, it insists upon itself. And I'm going to say it's boring and bad, and then we can talk about Nostromo. The ankle height collision for this map fucking blows. It's so bad. And the other thing too about Nostromo is that even though it's like considered one of the more medium-sized maps in terms of overall tile size, you have this issue where, I'm tempted to open paint again, but you have this issue where all of the generators spawn around the edge of the map, and there's never one in the center in front of main. And so you're not able to, you have to patrol the edges and the corners of the map, and it makes it feel so much larger overall. But there are some shots where you're like, oh, I can hit underneath or over the circle desk, or I can play around these tiles really easily, and there's some cool things that you can do in the weird 4 lanes that they have and things like that. And there's a lot of windows, and windows are easy for Deathslinger to deal with, and a lot of the tiles are extremely short and really unsafe filler palettes, which Deathslinger can play on really well. I think there are some very fun things you can do on Nostromo, but I think that it's a bad map because of the other things that work against its design. None of these maps I'm saying are like, these are badly designed, or they look terrible. I'm saying this in terms of how Deathslinger plays on them, and how it actually feels to play Deathslinger on a lot of these maps. And it's really sad to see that, 5, 12, 10, 22, 28, 30 of the 44 maps are kind of bad for Deathslinger for a variety of reasons, and a lot of those come down to how slow he is. Like, being a 4.4 killer trying to navigate a lot of these maps, especially when you're behind, or you're missing shots, or just not on your A game all the time, makes the map really work against you in a lot of ways. There's some maps where they are larger maps, but they're fun to play around outside of the main building, to the point where you can put them in the good map category. But then things like Nostromo, they're not as fun to play outside of the main building, and everything's all the way to the edges, and there's no shack building on Nostromo either. So I mean, the little spacecraft in the corner is considered shack by the game, but yeah, I'm feeling pretty confident in this listing in terms of maps. Let me reorganize a little bit here. Oh, did I get him backwards? I did get him backwards, didn't I? I meant to get Eyrie down there. Let me swap him around. Yeah, there we go. Because I forgot this big tower is the main building. Yeah. Yeah. I feel confident in that one. Overall, that's how I'm going to rate the maps for Deathslinger. Okay. Now, for the most controversial tier list of all, which I've already made, so I didn't want to like take time just talking about every single one, because there's 140 perks, I think, on the killer side of things. This might be, some people might look at this and be like, this is the most awful dog shit that I've ever seen in my life. But I want to explain my tiers, right? So we'll start down here. I accidentally added an extra help wanted. These are all organized alphabetically, by the way. They're not organized by, in every tier they're organized alphabetically. They're not organized by actual strength. And starting down here, you have Detrimental. These are perks that I think that when you're bringing them, you're actively nerfing yourself. Bad perks are just bad perks that really need a lot of help to actually work. Unfit perks are perks that are unfit for Deathslinger or overall builds. These are ones that you'll need to actually really hyper focus in on, or actually get consistent value out of. Middling, I feel, are perks that you can pair with some things to do okay with, but they're not always going to be your first choice. Decent, these are perks that are good, that you might want to pair with one other thing to actually get value out of. And then great is just like perks that are unequivocally the best across pretty much every killer, and Deathslinger is no exception with that. Okay, so in great tier, we have a lot of your typical regression, high rate killer perks that you see pretty much everywhere. And the reason why they're all just great in general, like Corrupt Intervention or Scourge Hook Pain Res, is because they just do what they do extremely well. So Corrupt Intervention, right? You block the 3 generators that are furthest from you, and that forces survivors to come to you, and it shortens the playing field significantly, which saves Deathslinger so much time. If you're not playing inside of your Corrupt Intervention as well, and you get a down outside of your Corrupt Intervention and you're near other survivors, you can immediately apply pressure because they're only able to work on generators that are closer to you. Corrupt Intervention is just good on any killer. Deathslinger is no exception. When I made a comp build for Deathslinger, I included Corrupt Intervention in it because it's just good. I have no notes about this perk whatsoever. I think it deserves to be in this tier every single time. Coup de Grace, I think, is up here in great because even if you have Corrupt Intervention, or if you're not running Corrupt Intervention for that matter, you're always going to be behind on generators. You get your first down with Deathslinger, first generator will pop, you'll have 2 stacks of Coup de Grace every single time that you go for a down on people. And this also amplifies the lunge that you get off of hitting on a chain. So you chain somebody, and then you pull, and then you swing before the chain breaks, and then Coup de Grace extends the range of that lunge as well, and gets you a lot of really nasty hits you wouldn't otherwise, and makes up for distance for Deathslinger if he doesn't have his gun ready. So you get almost a second ranged attack when you're running Coup de Grace, and I think it's really, really good on Deathslinger. The Deadman Switch, even though it got nerfed by 15 seconds this last patch, I still think the information that it gives and the time that it buys Deathslinger is really good. Same thing goes with Deadlock. You lose a generator, okay, where do I need to go next? Cool, that's blocked for 25 seconds. Or No Holds Barred, whatever it's called for you now. I have the Pinhead license, or I bought Pinhead, so I have the license name of the perk, which is Deadlock. But No Holds Barred is a really good perk. And you can see as well, 2 of these perks in Great tier are either specific to Deathslinger or a general perk. So that's why I like having it up here. And then Grim Embrace buys you a lot of time, gives you information. And I think for Deathslinger specifically, it's good because you leave the hook and you basically get a mini Corrupt Intervention every single time that you hook somebody freshly. And that in and of itself just buys you so much time on the map all the time. I love running Grim Embrace in a lot of regression perks, a lot of builds that try to do gen blocking and buying time for Deathslinger on the map. Not his best perk overall. I think that there are some things that are a little bit better, but I still think that you put Grim Embrace into a build and you're like, oh yeah, this feels great. This feels fantastic to have. Lethal Pursuer is so good. I mean, it's just good on any killer, but again, saving Deathslinger time by letting him know where everyone is at the start. No Way Out buys you time in the end game if you're missing your shots, and it basically, if you think about it, No Way Out refunds all of the time that you spent reloading in a game and missing shots. So getting a time refund at the end of a game on your earlier mistakes gives you a lot of agency in the end game, especially if you run it with No-Ed. But I think even No Way Out by itself is still good on Deathslinger, and that's why I have it up here in Great. Pain Res needs no introduction. Most efficient regression perk in the game. For Deathslinger, it's no different. The only thing that I don't like about Pain Res specifically is that on indoor maps it kind of sucks, and your Scourge Hook generation can be awkward sometimes. But Pain Res is just good. It's just good. I don't have anything else to say about it. Surge is also great because Deathslinger is a basic attack killer all the time. Every time that you get it down, it'll always be with a basic attack. So Surge makes all the generators explode, and I bring Surge all the time. It's one of my favorite perks on Slinger because of it. And then we have Decent. I'm considering moving a Nurse's Calling down, and I think I will. I'm going to move this down to middling now that I've thought about it a little bit. Barbecue and Chili. Now, I know that Warlord actually doesn't like Barbecue and Chili very much because he's like, well, you're getting information on survivors that are so far away from you that by the time you're able to act on the information, they're already gone. I think Barbecue and Chili is still really good even on Deathslinger because it gives you the macro information that you need in order to continue playing the rest of the game. So Barbecue and Chili lights up 40 meters away. You know, oh, there's people all the way over on that generator, and you've determined that there's no distortion in the game. Then you know, hey, there's somebody else nearby. Let me try and hunt those people out. Combine it with another aura perk, or you just combine it with using your eyeballs to find out, oh, there might be somebody nearby going for this unhook, and then you can hover around the unhook really easily. It gives you such a great macro read overall that I think that the information that it gives and doesn't give you simultaneously makes this perk really decent. But it's, yeah, exactly. It makes the least out of Barbecue, but it's still a decent perk. Like, you're not gonna throw barbecue into a build for Deathslinger and say like, oh darn, this perk sucks. It's gonna be like, okay, I got some use out of that. And if somebody also doesn't pre-run, when they start hearing your chair radius as you approach them from barbecue and chili, then you still get information out of this, which is great. Brutal Strength, I feel, is very necessary with the pallet density update, and it saves Deathslinger a lot of time by breaking open walls and kicking generators if you're doing a gen kick build. Just breaking pallets in general that you might not be able to play around saves you a lot of time. Deathslinger's, this is something that I'm going to say a lot about Deathslinger, but he's such a slow character and can get punished for missing and having to reload and the slowdown from reloading and all that sort of stuff, to the point that Deathslinger Brutal Strength makes up for some of the time that he misses just by the nature of his power and his kit. So that's why I still have it in decent, because I think it's good. And if you pair it with Eruption, then you're not dry kicking gens, you kick them faster and you can get back on the field quicker. You can get your guns up faster. That's why I like it. Eruption also just a great regression perk overall, because you down somebody and then you get ranged regression and information on anybody on the generator. So it has like a dual purpose in that way, in that you kind of invest in gen regression later when you're using Eruption, which is very nice. Haven't heard one bad take all night. Let's go! Oh, thank you, bud. I'm kind of crossing my ankles. Hello, Adeptus. Welcome in. Adeptus Ineptus. I remember seeing your name. You had been in chat yesterday and everything, and I didn't get a chance to say it, but I very much like your name. It's very fun. It reminds me of the Adeptus Ridiculous podcast. Correct, Rem. Yeah. I think it needs to be paired with something to get really good value out of it, and I think that you prefer to run other things. That's why it's down there. Forever Entwined is decent too. Some people might be like, it's doesn't really save you, so it should really save you a whole lot of time and stuff like that, but it actually saves you, once you get up to 8 stacks, which is very easy to do with Deathslinger because of breaking the chain and stuff, this thing saves you half a second on every time that you're in the hooking animation. That doesn't include the time it takes to pick people up quicker or drop them faster in case you need to counter a Sabo or you need to counter somebody and you have like Agitation Starstruck going on. I feel like Forever Entwined is just such a good time saver for Deathslinger that I like running it in a lot of builds, and it's a good slot in for a lot of perks, I think. I know that Elemental of Dark, if she's in here or not, she doesn't really like Forever Entwined all that much, but I don't agree with her. I think it saves you so much time, and it's really underrated, especially when you run Forever Entwined with Agitation. Like Agitation, I skipped over by mistake. You buy yourself a lot of time by being able to reposition where you want to with a survivor on your back. And then you combine them with Forever Entwined and you save so much time. Zapples, for example, probably one of the best Deathslinger mains that I know, at least in the States. He runs Agitation, Forever Entwined, Surge, Pain Res. That's his build. Gearhead as well. Gearhead's a weird one, but hear me out on this. You break the chain, you get 30 seconds of information. You spear the survivor again and you down them again, you get another 30 seconds of potential information. A Gearhead with Lethal, that's why it's decent, because then you can pair it with Lethal, and oh my god, you get 10 seconds of aura read every single time somebody hits a skill check. Which also happens to pair really well nowadays with this hyper-focused stakeout dogshit build that we're seeing everywhere now, because they're like, oh, I want to get more skill checks. And you're like, okay, sure, skill check it up. Let me get you perma aura red on Gearhead now. Getting head from an android girl, call it Gearhead. Anyway, Blood Favor, Hex Blood Favor, Noed, and Ruin are all of the 3 decent Hex perks for Deathslinger. Blood Favor because it helps you snowball early game, because you can break the chain, block the pallet, get the M1 follow-up really quickly and 2-tap somebody, especially if you're running Cigar. Even if you're not running Cigar, though, being able to deny a pallet and having to force a survivor to take really bad 50s elsewhere or zone them into a more open space gets a lot of value on this perk, especially with the pallet density update now. You can block so many pallets with this perk, and it's great. Noed gives you a second chance in the endgame, although it revealing its aura over time does give you like a limited amount of time before you can actually really use it. So that kind of makes it not that great to play, but it still gets, like, you're basically guaranteed a kill in the end game, especially if you're not running Iridescent Coin when you're running no-ed, and so I think it's a decent perk. I think it's alright to slot into something, and it's not bad for a basic perk either. I'm all ears. I like the aura read on window vaults. You have somebody vault the window at Shack, and you get to know what location they're going to. That's just fun. That just makes Deathslinger's life so much easier, being able to find people there. So, no real notes about that. It's not a very complex perk, but I think it gives you a lot of information as a Deathslinger player, to the point where if you're not familiar with playing Deathslinger or the timing of survivors walking behind walls and things like that, I'm All Ears is an excellent set of training wheels to work with. Mindbreaker's really good, even though it's bugged right now. Just not getting pre-run at generators all the time, so immensely satisfying. That's why I like this perk. I love running this with Surge, Surveillance, and Whispers is my favorite go-to build, even though I can admit, like, I have Surveillance and Whispers down here because I think they're middling, but for my personal taste, that's my favorite build that I like to run. Includes Mindbreaker because getting pre-run as Deathslinger feels really bad, and this is probably your best counter to it overall when the perk is actually working. Okay, Monitor and Abuse. I'm going to move Monitor and Abuse down again as well. I think the nerf that Monitor and Abuse had actually made it so much worse. Nowhere to Hide is decent. Kick a gen, find a survivor. Oppression, kick a gen, get all the other gens that you're not nearby regressing, and also find out other survivors if they're on a gen with a short cooldown. Pretty good stuff, I'd say. Pretty decent map control things you can do. Pop Goes the Weasel, kick a gen for more kick. It's not quite as effective as Eruption because it's not as immediate, but being able to use it in combination with other perks makes Pop Goes the Weasel really strong, and it can save you in some late game instances, and it has saved me in some late game instances. Rapid Brutality is decent. The reason why I really like Rapid Brutality on Deathslinger is because when you hit a survivor with your basic attack, you get that haste for 10 seconds or something, right? I don't remember the exact value, I'm already failing at this. But Rapid Brutality, you get that 5% haste for 10 seconds, and if you hit a survivor off of a chain, you can then reload, and the haste is then applied to while you're still reloading, which means that you lose very little distance while reloading with Rapid Brutality. And you very rarely ever get into Bloodlust with Deathslinger, because once you M2 and then M1 to fire the shot, you're no longer allowed to have Bloodlust. So if you use your power frequently enough, Rapid Brutality should be, the downside of Rapid Brutality should not be enough for it to be a detriment to you. And it actually works really well on a lot of builds, especially in more chase-oriented builds there. Gift of Pain. Gift of Pain is decent. It's decent slowdown. You can pressure people from a distance. If they try to unhook behind you, you turn around, you shoot them, and remove all of their healing upsides. And then if they do get healed, they are then penalized with a passive regression nerf until they get injured again. Pairs really well with Jagged Compass. Jagged Compass also gives you information on where your most commonly worked on gen is. And I think that even by itself, you're still like, okay, let me just hook on a Scourge Hook real quick. Oh, I have to go to that gen. Cool, let me walk over there. So it works well with other Scourge Hook perks, but it also just works well as its own perk in general. And you're never really lost without Jagged Compass, which makes sense. You have a compass. It's telling you where to go. Sloppy Butcher's decent on Deathslinger. It's not as good as Rapid Brutality, but I wouldn't say that it's middling. When I bring Sloppy Butcher, I'm thinking, sweet, 90 seconds of Mangled and Hemorrhage in case I lose this chase. It is best for a lot of those hit and run kind of play styles, but it's not a miss in any build that you bring it in. You might want to replace it with other things that do slightly better than it. And if you're doing a more M1-centric build, you can do that. But it's also the same to be said with, like, Nowhere to Hide, Oppression, Pop Goes the Weasel. You have to kick the gen to get value out of it, and if the gens aren't kickable, then you don't get value. Same with Rapid Brutality. You have to hit your M1s, and if you're not hitting your M1s, then you don't get any value. Sloppy Butcher, I feel, is in a similar boat here, where I'm just like, yeah, it's a decent perk. I like running it in anti-altruistic perks, or builds as well. You want to take a hit? Okay, Mangled and Hemorrhage for 90 seconds, good luck. Spies from the Shadows, decent information perk. Not a whole lot else to say about it. Not the greatest on Deathslinger, but still good. Even if he scares away crows at 24 meters when he shoots,
he's not usually scaring away the crows by the time that he approaches a survivor. So a survivor sets off a crow, and then you take the shot, and you've already set off the crows anyway, so it doesn't matter. Tinkerer gives you stealth for 16 seconds, undetectable for 16 seconds, gives you information on what generator to go to. You sprint over there, you're undetectable, and you can catch people off guard very, very easily with this. Granted, on larger maps, it's not always the best. You see a generator in the corner, get Tinkerer on it, and you're not going to be able to clear the distance in time to get there. So there are some weird situations where it doesn't work. Same with Unforeseen, where Unforeseen you have to kick a gen to get the stealth, but when you do have that stealth perks are very good on Deathslinger. Zanjin Tactics is a weird one. Survivor drops a pallet, you get to see which direction they're headed by reading their aura, and you get to see all the pallets as well, so you can preemptively aim at a lot of things when you're sliding around corners and things like that, doing the South Dakota drift. And that one feels pretty good. I am happy with Zanjin Tactics in general. Now to our middling perks. I kind of want to go through these a little bit quicker. A lot of these perks are perks that I feel aren't always good on Deathslinger, but they can potentially get some value down the line. There's a lot of hex perks in here, by the way. Crowd control. Blocks windows, makes survivor pathing more easy to read. Devour Hope makes it so that they have to deal with you having an exposed perk at 3 stacks total. Face the Darkness gives you information. Plaything makes you hide your information. Undying protects your ruin and your Noed, but it has to go with another perk to actually do anything. And then other things like Human Greed. Now, I know that Toba loves Human Greed on Springtrap. However, this is not Springtrap. I don't have the map mobility with which to actually act on Human Greed consistently. So it's just an okay perk. It's a middling perk. It's a perk that I'm like, okay, I have Human Greed. But it's not something that I'm always loving. Lightborn here is such an interesting one. People are like, oh, but it's an S tier perk. But if the survivors don't bring flashlights or flashbangs, or they miss their hits, or you're running Forever Entwined, which saves you time as well, then Lightborn just doesn't really do a whole lot. So it's like, it's kind of okay, but it's middling. Monitor and Abuse reduces your terror radius by 25%. Now, I don't know. I know that that reduces to 24 if you're in a 32 meter terror radius, but if you run the double add-ons that reduce your terror radius as well, when aiming down sights the Gold Creek Whiskey and the Marshal's Badge, is it 25% of that 20 then? Which would be 5? So you go down to 15 meter terror radius instead of what you used to do, which was, I'm doing math in my head, 12? So you get like 3 meters less on Monitor and Abuse. So it's not fantastic. Yeah, they can still stand with Last Stand and pallets. Yeah, exactly with Lightborn. But Forever Entwined, you get so much faster compared to Lightborn. And then other things in here are things that like have weird conditional unlocks. Like Enduring, you have to get stunned by a pallet. There are funny things you can do with Enduring, but you have to kind of force it to get good use out of it. Languid Touch, you have to pair with something else that works really well, and you're playing Deathslinger, so you scare crows frequently when you fire your shot. Hysteria is actually not half bad after the buff that it received. It has a 20-second cooldown and a 40-second duration, I believe. Either way, you can overlap Hysteria duration and make survivors perma-oblivious if you keep chaining hits with this perk. But that also relies you on chain hits, and sometimes there are some maps or scenarios that you get into that it's not the greatest. Infectious Fright, everyone inside your terror radius screams. It's good for being anti-swift, but it's not fantastic. Other things that you might want to run that are anti-swift are Forever Entwined, Sloppy Butcher, even Ruin in a way, because if they leave a generator, then they're not working on it and it regresses passively, you know? Darkness Revealed's a weird one. I think I'm going to move that down, actually. I'm going to move Darkness Revealed down here. I'm going to move Fire up here, next to Friends Till the End and Furtive. Bamboozle, I don't find myself vaulting windows often enough to get value out of this perk. And I want to bait survivors into window vaults anyway because I get free hits through them, so I don't like running Bamboozle. Alien Instinct is weird. They buffed this perk as well, where the furthest injured survivor becomes oblivious. So if there's only one injured survivor and they're nearby you, and you hook them, then we have, then you get to see the aura and they're oblivious. And that's kind of fun. Same with Nurse's Calling. I feel like you can't really make a lot of value off of this off of Deathslinger because you don't have the great mobility for it. But when you do get value out of it, it does feel pretty nice. Batteries included. and Fire Up both rely on you to lose the game to do things with, but when you do kind of get them rolling, they do feel pretty nice, especially when you get towards the late game. Down to one perk, or down to one gen, and you have batteries included across the map and 4 stacks of Fire Up. That feels pretty good. I'd say that that's like a pretty decent combo. Blood Warden can also be middling. It can be like good as an endgame perk, especially because survivors love taunting at exit gates. And so if you hit somebody in the exit gate, you down them, you hook them, and then they try to taunt you in the exit gate again, oh, you have Blood Warden, so you can't leave, which is very funny to me. So Blood Warden can work in endgame builds. Colubrine got buffed recently. It's good information, but not nearly as good as things like Gearhead. Like, why would I run Colubrine when I could run Gearhead Ruin? You know, I don't have to kick the gen. I can just have the gen passively regress at 150 speed, and I get information off of it. Dark Devotion. I feel so conflicted about this because sometimes you just never find the obsession, and then Dark Devotion does nothing for the whole game. And it's less consistent than Unforeseen. That's why it's down here instead of up here. Discordance also relies on survivors to be at a generator and also not pre-running you. Dying Light relies on you hooking survivors that aren't the obsession to get any value out of it. And that's even if you are running a build that works off of passive regression, which I like running Dying Light with Jagged Compass, Gift of Pain, and then like Ruin or something. So you just have all the passive regression going on and just keep up pressure that way if you can. Machine learning, you have to find the right gen to kick, but the haste and the undetectable is very, very underrated. You run this with Tinkerer, actually, and machine learning Tinkerer is a really deadly combo, especially on Deathslinger. You get so much stealth, you get so much movement speed as well from this, and then you pair that with like batteries included and maybe even a NOED at the end of the day, and survivors will never know where you are, and you're moving incredibly quick, and you can shoot them from a long range. I love that combo. Overcharge allows you to kick a gen, but it's not bad. It's just that you can do things better than this. Overwhelming Presence pairs really well with Languid Touch, and that's kind of it. You exhaust a survivor after they use an item, which by itself, I guess, if they're trying to blind you or something, it'd be really funny if you did Overwhelming Presence with like Lightborn or something, where survivor tries to blind you, you reveal their aura and they get exhausted, and then you can chase after them immediately after. And that's a pretty funny combo I can think of. But you could also do like Forever Entwine with Overwhelming Presence, and maybe do something a little bit better by saving yourself time as well. I don't know. There's like trade-off here, I would say, that Overwhelming Presence gives. Predator also giving you aura read upon losing a chase with the survivor. It's okay. Floods of Rage, it's alright. Starstruck relies on you running Agitation frequently. Not terrible, because you do have a 32-meter terror radius when you're carrying anyway. Starstruck's just like a perk that needs other things to work well for it, but when it does work well, it's very funny. Surveillance, I'm sad to put in middling. Like Eerie Coin said, that it's like, it's criminal that you have Zanchin up here, but not Surveillance. And I think that you're in Chase, and you're stronger in Chase than you are in regressing generators and applying pressure to generators as Deathslinger. Surveillance feels like it needs so many things to actually work with it compared to Zanchin tactics. Like Zanchin, you're always going to be running into pallets, especially with this pallet density update, and you're going to want to get hits behind those or behind walls or anything along those lines. But Surveillance, now that one needs you to run Surge or Ruin or other things like Oppression or even Overcharge to just aggressively regress the generator at the same time. Yeah, I feel like Surveillance, even though I like Surveillance, even though I'm a big fan of Surveillance, I can't like look past it and say that it's a perk that's good enough to run by itself or as a pair with one other perk. I feel like it needs a couple of other things to make up for how little it actually does. It's a comfy perk, yeah, but comfy doesn't always mean good. Thrilling Tremors got buffed, but I still think it's kind of middling because it relies on you to pick up a survivor to block gens with. Grim Embrace is just better overall. You're already moving, and then you're also moving to block gens with Grim Embrace, so Thrilling Tremors is just okay. It gives you information, but other perks give you information better. Like, I want you guys to look at this tier list overall as anything that's above Unfit even anything that's above bad, really, but anything that's above unfit for Deathslinger, is something that you wouldn't be upset to have in your build if you were to play Chaos Shuffle. With that in mind, like, you wouldn't mind getting Thwack. I think Thwack is good, but you need to have a survivor drop a pallet, and you need to kick the pallet to make it work. So it's just like, it's just all right, you know? It's good for information reading. I think that it's good for like preventing flashlight blinds at pallets and things like that, which is kind of funny. So it is good for countering that specifically. But I think you can do better. I think you have other things you can work with better overall. And you burn through those tokens so quickly nowadays too, especially if you're not running with like brutal strength or something. And at that point, you're doing brutal and thwack, so your build's already a little bit behind. You need to run something aggressive like oppression and nowhere to hide to actually make that perk work with other things to make up for the fact that it doesn't save you time on the map, it just gives you information. If this game works as it should, then it's not useful. Exactly, which is why it's in middling. You can swing and then get a shorter cooldown on your missed swings if you're not hitting survivors, but then that also relies on you not hitting your swings consistently or just choosing to not break the chain, you know? Trail of Torment, you kick a generator, you become stealthed, but then the generator gets marked and so they can unstealth it very quickly. So, it's kind of like a big indicator saying, hey survivor, I have kicked this generator and now you can't hear me, and people usually pick up pretty quickly on what's going on there. Weave Attunement is middling by itself without Franklin's, which Franklin's is in bad tier in case you're wondering. But Weave Attunement is by itself because there's a description in Weave Attunement that states that survivors automatically drop their spent items. So if they end up healing somewhere and the medkit gets depleted, they will automatically drop it when you have Weave Attunement equipped. Or if they use up a toolbox, they'll automatically drop it. So you actually get all of the information you want from it, and then if the survivor's like, oh shit, that's Weave Attunement, they pick it up and then they're oblivious. Which, it works okay, but it needs Franklin's to work really well, but it's not bad by itself. We'll get through Phantom Fear. Phantom Fear I feel is so middling. It's good for finding rats in the corners of maps, things like that. Gives you the aura, that's fine. It's a little bit short. Cooldown's a little bit long. You really want to run this with Lethal Pursuer, maybe. But the thing that I particularly don't like about Phantom Fear is that I either already know where a survivor is, or I'm going to find one. Or I'm already chasing one. And then this goes off cooldown, and I'm in chase, and then the person that I'm in chase with, who's directly in front of me, screams and reveals their aura. And it's like, okay, I already knew that they were there, and now my perk's on cooldown again. This is just the middling of middling for me, overall, in terms of perks. It's all right. It does one thing well, and then it just kind of gets held back by its own existence. Whispers as well, my beloved. I love Whispers. Whispers is one of my favorite perks, but I can't deny that it's a middling perk. You're not going to be using it to triangulate positions all that well. You're not going to be using it to great effectiveness in the mid-game. It gets countered pretty heavily by being on small or indoor maps. And especially like Lery's, if you're on a small indoor map where it's always active, and you're like, oh shit, well, of course I'm within 32 meters of somebody. It's the tiniest map in the game. So Whispers is it's just alright. But I do like using it to triangulate positions. In my birthday video as well, I was looking for some survivors on the back of the Toba Landing game, and I was like, oh, Whispers went off over here, and then I moved to my right, and the Whispers turned on, and I was like, oh, okay, so they're back behind main, and I find them immediately. Okay, Unfit. We're getting down here. We have our emotional support help wanted. But Unfit. And there's a perk in bad that some people are going to be very upset with me for putting down here, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Unfit, we have Awaken Awareness. You run this with Agitation and Starstruck, and it has gotten me hits before. Like, I'll see somebody hiding behind a box while I'm carrying a survivor, and I have Awaken Awareness, and I'm like, oh, okay. I know exactly where you are, and I can initiate chase right away. Helps against super altruistic teams. It's great with Forever Entwined because of that. Like anything that involves picking up survivors, Awaken Awareness also really helps with. But it's not great by itself. So I don't think that Awaken Awareness deserves to be any higher than Unfit, as does Bitter Murmur. Bitter Murmur has the problem of revealing survivors by having their auras, but then sometimes the generator that got done is so far away from you that Like, oh, there goes the auras, or oh, the auras are all hidden behind the generator bubble, so I get no value out of it. It's just like, you can get information off of it, but the amount that you get is such a pittance of information comparatively. Blood Echo, now, I know people are like, whoa, what if you do Blood Echo in Mindbreaker, or why is Blood Echo like so low and unfit? It's because Deathslinger is not a very good hit and run killer, and you have to run this with Sloppy Butcher. And then you're running Sloppy Butcher and Blood Echo, especially in a meta that entirely centers itself around healing. Healing perks are out of control right now, as are Gen Rush perks. But healing perks are so out of control right now that Blood Echo very rarely, if ever, gets value on Deathslinger. It's unfit. That's why it's here. It's unfit, as is Wretched Fate. The condition that it has to activate is not fantastic. Well, they have to complete a gen, so then the Obsession just can't do anything. It's like, okay. But then they find the Hex, and that perk just does nothing. So it did nothing at the start of the game, and then it does nothing after it gets cleansed in 20 seconds. It's just not easy to work with. Pentimento also reveals... The reason why it's not up here in middling, and why Plaything's not down here, is because at least Plaything kind of does something when you activate it. But Pentimento reveals its aura now. So it gets the regression penalty of 20% plus, I think, 3% for every stack, but it needs other things to work with, and it relies on other perks. Forced Penance, I love Forced Penance. I love punishing survivors for taking hits, but it's just not great. Terminus relies on you losing the game, and also having injuries in the endgame to actually do anything with it. Septic Touch got buffed so that if somebody's healing within your terror radius, they get 30 seconds of exhausted and blindness. So the new effect is not bad. 30 seconds is not terrible. However, it still requires you to be in the terror radius for them to be healing in your terror radius, and for them to not also like pre-run to something with it. I don't think this perk is any particularly good, but at least it's not bad anymore. Deathbound requires you to have multiple survivors injured, and you can't exactly action on the information right away unless you're doing some weird anti-heal build or you have like other information to supplement it. Dissolution. The activation time that Dissolution takes is too slow for Deathslinger to really get any great value out of it. You break the chain with the Cigar, and then after the Cigar hit ends, you have to wait an extra second and hope that the survivor hasn't jumped over the pallet or left for a different one that they can just drop and then play around anyway. So even though Dissolution is good on some killers, I don't think Deathslinger has the mobility to really compensate for it comparatively. Darkness Reveal is unfit. There are other information perks that you can do better, and any Dredge main will tell you that locker spawns are horrendous. So if somebody's not nearby a locker or not on a map that it can have a lot of lockers spawn in it, this perk is pretty useless and unfit for Deathslinger, but at least it gets a little bit of help, you know? Make your choice. If you're 24 meters away, is that right? 24 or 32? I'm losing my mind on these. But if you're a decent distance away from the hook and the survivor gets unhooked, the unhooker becomes exposed for 60 seconds. Requires you to play back to hook, land a shot on somebody who's pre-running away from you because they get a big warning sign that they're exposed, and so you're not often catching up with people on this, and with the pallet density update too, it's very hard to get hits. Make your choice is 32 meters. Thank you. That's what I thought it was. I could not remember if it was 32 or 24, but either way, it requires you to be a fair distance away and then come back and then land a shot. I guess it like kind of encourages people to not heal under hook necessarily, so it could be a good pairing with Gift of Pain and Jagged Compass, which is why, like, in the unfit tier, it's not great, but yeah, you'd rather run Eerie Coin and then a better perk in its place, right? Nemesis is funny, but also Nemesis is funny bad. Survivor stuns you with a pallet, you get it activated, but not if you break the chain, because that's what the perk says. It's with a locker or a pallet. And then they get Oblivious for a number of seconds, but usually with Deathslinger, it's unlikely that you're trying to juggle obsessions and play around information in that way. I just don't really like it all that much. Make Your Choice and Nemesis are perks that rely on survivors playing badly. That's really what it comes down to. Or the killer even playing badly and then making up for it with Nemesis, so I don't really like it. Play with Your Food is also unfit for Deathslinger. Sure, you get the haste stacking if you get into a chase more often, but then if you fire a shot, you just lose your stack immediately. You just burn through stacks on play through food so quickly. You do get to clear a little bit of distance if you drop chase, but you also don't want to drop chases very often because you're so slow that you can't afford to lose chases unless there's a cluster of survivors and you can lose the obsession. Then you can use that haste to catch the other survivor nearby, and then use that to finish off a chase. And so that's why it's like play through food has some like very niche use case scenarios where it's okay, but Ravenous is not a good perk, especially with Vigil running around a lot. I like the idea. I like how it exposes people and shows them with screams, but it's whatever. It's not that great. Remember Me specifically needs endgame builds to work, and specifically needs you to kill the obsession early in order to get full value out of it, and specifically needs to not have you running a build that is obsession swapping centric. Because then if you swap the obsession, then someone else gets the benefit of Remember Me. So, not a great perk. It only works in one specific build, and that's why it's down here with like Terminus. Now, bad perks. I think a lot of these speak for themselves. I think a lot of these perks really do speak for themselves. I think Dragon's Grip with Trail of Torment is a very funny combo. However, you have to run Dragon's Grip and Trail of Torment. And I don't think Deathslinger is the greatest use of it. He's pretty quiet, to be honest with you. Like, Deathslinger as a character is a pretty quiet character when he's not shooting at you. So you can get value out of it, but it's just not good. Franklin's Demise as well needs specifically Weave Attunement to work, but at least Weave Attunement has its own use conditions that makes it so that it's not always attached to Franklin's. Franklin's is just so bad. I don't really need to speak too much on most of these perks. They're all very gimmicky. They're all pretty bad. Haunted Ground I don't like because, again, Vigil exists, and also by the time that you're able to even get somebody that's on a trap totem, it's just too much time that you spend going after a survivor. Third Seal I like because I like blindness effects. I like survivors not being able to use their windows of opportunity, Smile, but it's a hex perk. 2 can play, does not activate off of Deathslinger's Chainbreak, even though the perk does not distinguish the difference between it, and Hubris does activate off of a Chainbreak, which is exceptionally useless on Deathslinger. You can, funny enough, play Hubris with Enduring on Deathslinger. You pull a survivor into a pallet and then force them to drop the pallet on you, and then you can turn around and swing and hit them with Hubris, haha, hilarious. But you're still breaking the chain and hitting them anyway, so it doesn't make a difference. It doesn't make a lick of difference. If you walk through a pallet, have Enduring, and then Hubris them around the back of an unsafe pallet, then yes, you get it down. But it's like, why would I run Hubris? Why would I not just run Enduring, which is already a kind of middling perk, with something else that helps me in chase, you know? I don't think Insidious in general is a good perk. I think you are right, on indoor maps where you can kind of stand in a corner and then hide, and then somebody goes around and like, oh, where'd they go? Oh, I'm panicking, I can't see them, and then they run back into you because you've been stealthed the whole time. That's pretty funny. But the rest of these perks, yeah, just like kind of rancid in quality all around. New Deerstalker, actually. This is Deerstalker prior to rework is when I made this tier list. I'm gonna controversially, I keep saying controversially, but maybe it's not even that much. I'm gonna put this in unfit. I think the aura read is fine, but I don't think that Deathslinger wants survivors to see him. Haywire is terrible. Help Wanted relies on you kicking a generator that activates and then also getting a hit reliably. You'll have to run like machine learning with it and Tinkerer and other things to make this even work normally. And even then, it's like for what, 60 seconds? So you have to run, you have to aim, you have to shoot, reel him in, smack, you get the basic attack cooldown from this. It's just bad. Order is just bad. Iron Grasp is just bad. Mad Grit, bad. Bad perk. Save the best for last. This is the one that I know that people will be upset with me about. Save the best for last. Whenever you land your spear, and this is before it even does damage, when the spear lands on the obsession, you lose 2 stacks. When you damage the obsession after landing the spear, lose 2 stacks. Reload, land the spear on the obsession again, lose 2 stacks. Damage the survivor, the obsession, after landing the spear a second time, lose another 2 stacks. So, in one chase, if you use your power with Deathslinger, you lose all of your stacks to save the best for last. You might be like, okay, just leave the Obsession alone. But Deathslinger has the unique weakness of being so damn slow that he can't afford to chase somebody else. He can't afford to be like, oh, I found the Obsession. Oh, shit. Well, now I gotta go find somebody else because I can't lose my save the best for last stacks. I have to go somewhere else on the map. You don't have the time to do that. You really don't have the time to do that on Deathslinger. And so you're like, all right, well, I guess I'll just basic attack you and try to lose 4. But then I have to use my spear in the middle and still lose 6. And if you're not fully stacked, you just lose all your stacks chasing the Obsession. So this perk is just bad on him. Like, there are some moments where you're like, oh, good, I got value out of it. But that's also the same as saying, like, I got value out of Dragon's Grip or Franklin's or Game of Foot or Dominance or Claustrophobia or what's it called now? Cruel Limits or Ultimate Weapon. It's like, yes, you can have things that work out for it, but the conditions in which you actually work for it versus the natural detriment of bringing the perk far outweighs the benefits that it can give you. Wandering Eye is also really bad. You start a chase and you see the auras of all injured survivors within 16 meters of you. That's really not a lot, and that's also relying on you having multiple survivors injured. So, not a big fan of this. Superior Anatomy is just bad. Spirit Fury is just bad unless you're running it with Enduring, but then it relies on you to run Enduring. Thanatophobia, there's so much healing that goes around nowadays. And Deathslinger, again, being so slow, is not very good at slowing the game down or at hitting multiple survivors at once. So Thanatophobia, like, by its in concept is good, but in execution, especially for this killer, just not great. You run Thana with Legion, you run Thana with Plague, and there's some characters that just very barely get use out of it. Hex Overture of Doom I've gotten use out of, I guess. It's a Hex, and you have Tinkerer that does what Overture of Doom does better with, yeah, so. I don't really need to go into too much depth about this bad tier. I think that these all very much speak for themselves. These are all perks that I would throw into meme builds to try and make really funny, weird combinations, but if I ever get any of these perks in the bad category, and even some of the ones from the unfit category in Chaos Shuffle, I'm like, oh, that's a dog shit perk. And yeah, that's all I'm leaving to it. And then finally, our detrimental perks. We have Distressing, and we have Dark Arrogance. Distressing increases your terror radius by 30%. Deathslinger gets pre-run so often in this game that having his terror radius go wider is detrimental to him. 100% detrimental to him. Some characters, like, if you're doing an anti-heal build with a doctor or something and you shock people in a massive area with your static blast and you're being Mr. Worldwide with it, now that's kind of funny. That's kind of goofy. Deathslinger's not one of those characters that likes to be goofy with it. And then you also have Vecna's perk Dark Arrogance down here, because even though it doesn't increase the stun on the chain break, it does increase the stun on getting hit by pallets or flashlight stunned or anything along those lines, to the point where you're not really getting the benefit from it very often. You're not trying to vault windows with Deathslinger very often. And that's why I think it's detrimental, because you're more likely to suffer the stuns than you are to actually use the beneficial side of Dark Arrogance. So that's my general explanation for all of the perks, the killer perks in the game, and how good I think they are for my boy Deathslinger. Yeah, feel free to leave your thoughts below, because there'll be a YouTube video now. Just saying, let me know what you think about some of the perks, if some of them could be a little bit better, or if they're generally unfit. But for my playstyle and for the general playstyle of Deathslinger, I think, because that's what I do a lot of fundamental stuff with the killer, this is how I feel about the perks overall. And yeah, thanks for watching, fellas. You all have a good rest of your day, and bye-bye.